All right, so today I'm joined by Hank Silverberg, who's a professor here at George Mason University. He teaches the political journalism class here. Nice to have you here.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Hank has had a great career in the past, working at WTOP and radio for many years, and also at WSA 9. So I just wanted to say thank you here for coming. You've had a lot of experience covering elections. You've covered Capitol Hill before. Just kind of talk to me about how important midterms are to everyone.
Well, they're extremely important. I mean, President Biden has an agenda, and it's going to be extremely difficult for him to get anything done if the House goes Republican. So for the Democrats, it's important that they keep control of both the House and Senate so they can move his agenda forward. For the Republicans, they want to stop his agenda. They need to take control of the House and the Senate. And hopefully in the Senate for them, or in the House, they want to have a veto proof, meaning they'll have more votes vetoed. That's not, I can tell you right now, that's not going to happen. But there's a good possibility that the Republicans will take control of both houses and make things very difficult for President Biden for the next 2 years at least.
Do you think there's a chance that the Democrats could keep both?
Both? I don't know. I personally believe they've got a good shot at keeping the Senate. Pennsylvania and Georgia, as everybody's been saying, are the key. It would have been a shoo-in in Pennsylvania, except for Mr. Fetterman's stroke. A lot of voters are concerned. He did not look too good in his debate. I'm not an expert on medicine, but the experts are saying, that everything's in the head. It just doesn't come out right. So I think some people will be concerned about that. Some people might have voted for him. And then, of course, Mehmet Oz has the TV personality. That's not necessarily make him qualified to be the Senate, but some people, like the idea they know who he is. They think they know who he is by what he did on TV.
Yeah, so I guess speaking more towards races in Virginia, I know you live in the 7th district.
7th.
So could you just tell me a little bit about your thoughts on that race?
Things have really changed. When I first moved into the 7th district years ago, Dave Bratt was a Republican incumbent. He had just beaten Eric Cantor, who was among the leadership in the House. A long-time conservative Republican. Everyone was flabbergasted. Bratt basically was a placeholder. He sat there for 2 years and did absolutely nothing. And I'm not being unfair to him. He didn't do a single thing while he was in office. So Spanberger pulled an upset when she beat him 4 years ago. And she was easily reelected 2 years ago. The problem is the 7th has been radically gerrymandered. It should favor Democrats because they moved the district north a little bit into parts of Prince William County and Fredericksburg also, which are more Democratic. But Yelsey Vega also comes from Prince William. She's a supervisor there with a built-in base. And was a police officer. And she's hitting some of the right chords in this race. The one thing she's got all wrong, though, which may come back to bite her, is accusing Spanberger of being a copycat of Nancy Pelosi. She's really not. She's a moderate Democrat who has twice voted against the speaker to be the speaker. And she has worked across the aisle. I have to say, since I covered Congress, it's been almost 15 years now, the idea of bipartisanship has gone down the tubes. It does not exist anymore. And I think at times President Biden has trouble with that because he was in the Senate all those years where he could walk into the Republican leader's office and they could work out a deal and get things done. That is absolutely impossible the way the country is polarized right now.
Yeah. And I think another point that makes the 7th district so interesting is that Vega was endorsed by Trump, but she's kind of starting to veer away from that. Why do you think that is?
Well, Mr. Trump, just yesterday he attacked Ron DeSantis, a likely opponent in the primary. All the speculation is that he's going to announce for president again in 2014. There's a lot of Republicans who have always felt uncomfortable with Donald Trump, and they were hoping he would just go away. But he hasn't. They need him to win the election. They don't need him to run for president again because he's got carrying a lot of things, okay? And so she wants to be on Trump's side of the issues, but doesn't want to be a Trump. And Ron DeSantis is doing the same thing. And that wing of the party really doesn't want Trump to get too visible.
Yeah. And what I mean, do you think having Youngkin on her side is going to help her or not, especially with comments that she's made or that Youngkin has made regarding the attack on Paul Pelosi?
Virginia's governors are lame ducks the minute they take office because they can't run again. And the first question they're always asked is, are you seeking higher office? This is just my opinion, but there's no doubt in my mind that Glenn Youngkin wants higher office. And he's already working on that by traveling around the country, on the taxpayer's dime, I might add, supporting other candidates. He wants to build up some IOUs. He comes in, though, with a pretty good win a year ago and a lot of support among conservatives in Virginia. So I think he helps her more than Trump does. Okay, the question is, Mr. Youngkin's popularity is waning a little bit, all right? It's not, he's still got more approval than disapproval, but it's not as popular as it was before. Some of the things he promised during the campaign have fallen flat. So people are kind of saying, do I really want another Glenn Youngkin? I don't think she's another Glenn Youngkin, but I do think they're on the same side on a lot of issues.
Yeah, and going off of your point of higher office, do you think, like for the midterms, what do you think the ramifications of these specific midterms will have for the election in 2024?
Well, if the Republicans do take control of the House and the Senate, it's actually going to give Trump a lot less fodder because Biden won't have anything, won't go anywhere. Nothing he proposed will go anywhere, and he won't have anything to criticize. But he's got a substantial following, and he's got a lot of money. And some of the Republicans who are having trouble raising money are going to owe it to Trump because he helped them out so much. And it's going to help. All of it depends on who runs against him. I mean, if he gets challenged in a primary, and there's a possibility of DeSantis, Marco Rubio, Youngkin, Lindsey Graham, who's back and forth on Trump, and a few others who very well. But you saw what happened last time. We saw this with Ron. What do they call him? Ron Deconsistent or something like that, because he's already attacking potential, which before the midterms was really stupid. Okay, it's very bad to do because a lot of the Republicans who even support Trump even said, "Mr. Trump, shut up before the midterms. We don't want to get into internal battles until we win." But he's never listened to that before, so there's no reason why he listen to them now. In case you don't know, I have a very low opinion of Trump, and it's not about his party label, because he's not Ike, he's not Reagan, he's not even George W. Bush. So he helps and he hurts, because there's a lot of people out there who swear by Donald Trump. And if you have his tangible approval, then they're going to take a look at you and they say, okay, well, Trump likes her, so I'll vote for her. And there's still a substantial number of people out there who they go in there and they look for the R and the D, and that's how they make their decision. And that's going to happen again. Look, the key as to who wins, as in many elections, is voter turnout. And Republicans and Democrats don't decide the election. Independents do, always. Okay, so if the independents lead Democrat, especially in the 7th district, Spanberger wins again. If the independents lead Republican, then I think Yelsey has got a chance. All right, a pretty good chance. I don't trust polls anymore either. So you'll see a lot of polls. They were proven wrong 2 years ago and 4 years ago because so many people, they lie. The pollster will ask them, well, you vote for a Democrat or Republican. They're really a diehard Democrat, but they'll say, well, I haven't decided yet, because they want to throw the poll off, or vice versa, because they think it somehow influences the election. The only poll that matters is the one at the ballot box. And I tell you, I know a lot of other people, they'll have predictions, they'll go by statistics, but they're shooting in the dark on this one, really. I'm shooting in the dark like everybody else. It's so different than it was just 5 years ago, I remember in the Cuccinelli-McAuliffe race, which was the last governor's race I covered, it was pretty obvious to most of us who covered the election that Cuccinelli had absolutely no chance of winning. All right, and I remember early on, I just told this story in class. Early on, we were getting the votes in from southwestern Virginia, and that's Republican country, and Cuccinelli was winning, and everybody was going, oh my God, it's going to be an upset. And I just turned to him and I said, look, wait until Fairfax County votes. See what happens in Fairfax County. which still is pretty much dominated by Democratic politics, although less blue than in the past. Okay, but there are a million votes up here. All right, so what they do in Goochland is not going to have that much what they do in Fairfax. So look for where the votes are coming from. And then the thing you got to watch in this election is early vote dumps. In some states, and I don't really know what the rules are in Virginia, but in some states where they had early voting, they're allowed to count the votes as soon as the early voting ends. And most of them end a day or two before Election Day so they can restructure everything, right? They can count them, but they can't release them, the votes, until the polls are closed on Election Day. So you might see at 10 after 8, 15,000 people have voted in such and such an area, and the Republicans leading 2-1.
Yeah.
All right. But Republicans tend to vote by mail more than Democrats. Democrats tend to vote early more than Republicans. So you have to look at what those votes are. Are these votes by mail? Are these votes early? Okay. So then everybody says, oh, it looks like it's a Republican victory. And then the votes come in from the big city or the college town and completely turn it around. All right. And that's what happened in the last election, why the Republicans were screaming fraud, because they did not understand that the votes aren't counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're counted in clumps and put into the results in clumps. We used to joke every year, even in the old days, that every year there's some county clerk in some little county somewhere who finishes counting the 300 votes they got at 20 after 8, puts them in a closet and goes home for the night. And it turns out that at the end of the night, the election is so close that those 300 votes really matter. Okay? And it happens every election. And that's liable to happen again somewhere. And that's where you get all these false accusations of fraud. It's part of the way is the way we vote these days too. It used to be you went in, you pushed a little lever, it got recorded on the machine. The machine would give you a printout of what the votes were, and it was easy to tabulate. Now, every different place you go, they're different. We used to have the ones where you push button, okay, and it would all be stored in the machine. They were worried about tampering, so then they got the machines where you pushed a button, but it makes a paper record. I voted early, and it's you make your mark on the paper and you slip it in the paper and the machine records it, but they keep the paper ballot as a record. So if the machine gets broken, they'll have it. That's the trend. And I think the election technology has improved a lot, even in the last 2 years. So hopefully we'll get fewer reports. Another thing I can guarantee you, in any election that is within 3 or 4%, if the Republican is on the low end, there will be a challenge. And they'll scream fraud. There right now are 291 people, according to the count by the Washington Post. Let's credit them. 291 people on the federal Republican ballot who are election deniers, meaning they deny the results of the 2020 election. How many of them you think, if they lose, are going to scream fraud? Okay, so let's watch for this after the election. I think we're going to be more interesting after Election Day. And then the turnout on Election Day is always interesting. Yeah. Especially in a state like Virginia where you don't have a statewide race. In Maryland, you got the governor's race, but it's a Democratic state. So then the only question is, Governor Moore get the same votes that Chris Van Hollen gets, all right? In Virginia, we don't have a statewide race. Youngkin's not on, our 2 senators overlapping terms. So, the 6th district is really, the 7th district really is the only one that really matters. I mean, Morgan Griffin is running practically uncontested. You do have Wexton, and I forget who her opponent is. Mr. Cow? Yeah. Okay. That might be an interesting race, only because that's a kind of still a purple district. Next question.
Yeah. Well, that's actually all I have for you, but thank you so much for giving us our great expertise and everything you've accomplished throughout your career, and hopefully you're having a great day tomorrow when the
If I'm all wrong, you can tease me in class.
All right. Well, this is Hank Silverberg, everyone. Thank you, and we're out.